Welcome students to the MOOC lecture series. Today our topic is Evolution of State Structure, the Oriental Systems. We know India is the birthplace of the so-called Oriental system. Oriental system means which we can also call the saffron world. Includes India, China, Japan, Korea, Thailand, Burma, Sri Lanka, etc. These systems are totally different from what we know about the Western philosophies of statecraft and political theory. That's why we will begin with India. The basic concepts of Indian jurisprudence, political thought, political system, statecraft generate from the Vedas. Vedas are the repository of all Oriental knowledge systems of the saffron world. Portions and variations of the Vedas and Vedic understanding form the bedrock or the foundation of the Oriental system. In Vedas, the concept of king, kingdom, and administration is thus defined. In Vedas, we have the idea of a Rajan, a king. King is one who gives victory in war. But there is also the important concept of Gana or the people, which we now call as the public, from which the word republic comes. So, from ancient times, from Vedic times, we have concept of kingdoms, monarchies, as well as republics or Ganarajyas. So, we can also see that in the Oriental system and in India, democracy or republicanism has been from the very beginning. In the Vedic period, gradually, as we know, various tribes, various lineages or clans began to settle down from a pastoral to an agricultural existence. As they were settling down, they came to be associated with particular territories. The word for territory is Kshetra. So when a tribe settled down in a particular area, that part, that Kshetra, was associated with the name of that tribe, like Panchala, Kuru, Magad, etc., etc. Now the people who were in charge of guarding this Kshetra or guarding the clan and the tribe, people who could guard these tribes and the area associated with it, the Kshetra associated with it, were known as the Kshatriyas. Thus was born the class of Kshatriyas. But the Rajan need not belong only to the Kshatriya clan or the Kshatriya class. People from other denominations could also become Kshatriyas. The person who was able to protect the kingdom, person who was able to uphold dharma, person who was able to encourage people to victory, take people to victory, was the Rajan. A Rajan could be a Kshatriya, but all Kshatriyas could not be Rajan. The Rajan, by his duties and his karma and his actions, became a Kshatriya. So, we have touched upon a very important subject, that caste was not based on birth. Anybody who was a brave person, a courageous person, a leader, and a winner of wars, who could bring victories in wars, became a Rajan, and by that correlation became a Kshatriya. Now we come to the references in Manusmriti, in Gita, in Mahabharata and Ramayana, because after the Vedas, these are the basic texts which give us an idea of the Oriental or the Indian, the saffron way of political thought. We find that in Vedanta, the main, or Upanishads or Vedanta, the end of Vedas, the main idea of the main duty of a Rajan or a king was to uphold dharma. In Manusmriti, it was summarized to mean that a Rajan could uphold dharma if he took care of the Brahmins and took care of the Godhan. If cows, which was the most prized possession, most costly possession of an agricultural and pastoralist society, if cows and Brahmins could be saved by the Rajan, that Rajan was a good Rajan. So from a Rajan or a king who could bring victories in war in the early Vedic period, we come to a period in later Vedic age when the prime duty of the Rajan was not to just win wars, but protect the Brahmins and the Godhan. And in Mahabharata, we have different concepts of statecraft. Through the mouth of Vidur, we come to know about the various maxims of dharmic statecraft, Oriental or our Hindu way of statecraft. Vidut tells us about various maxims and various theories and various rules and regulations by which a Rajan should rule. One example is in Mahabharata it is mentioned that if a similar crime is committed by a Shudra and a Brahmin, the punishment for the Brahmin has to be 10 times more that of a Shudra. Because the Brahmin is a knowledgeable person and a leader of society, he has more responsibility to abide by the law, abide by truth, abide by dharma than a Shudra. Manusmriti, on the other hand, always talks of a situation of anarchy, guards against anarchy, and that's why talks of Matsyayan, or the prevention of anarchy, how it can be prevented. Dharma, therefore, in the later Vedic period, on this period which we are discussing, it now comes down to maintenance of harmony of nature, man, society, truth and justice. The concept of harmony becomes very important in the Oriental system, which we will find recurring as we go to China, Japan and other Eastern countries. Now, the philosophical underpinnings of this statecraft that we are discussing is Vedanta or Advaita. The philosophy is Advaita. Advaita means there is no distinction between the material object and the spiritual world or the mental world. That means there is no distinction between mind and matter. This is the uniqueness of Indian philosophy, of Dharmic philosophy, of the Oriental systems. In all the Oriental systems, from India to Japan to Korea to Thailand and Burma and Myanmar, this is the basic underpinning, that there is no difference between mind and matter. So what is important? Importance is given to maintenance of social order, maintenance of harmony, and the prime duty of the king or the Rajan becomes that people of different types in society are given equal opportunities and allowed to follow their dharma so that their karma becomes good. Now we find how the concept of dharma and karma, dhammo kammo as we say it, comes into the picture. In the Oriental or the Dharmic system, the notion of time is cyclical. Birth and death, they repeat each other in an endless cycle, and this is known as the cycle of life. Birth means death, death means birth. In the philosophy of Advaita and Vedanta, rebirth, birth, death, they follow each other, and hence Pralaya is Srishti and Srishti is Pralaya at the same time. Now this we have to keep in mind, because this becomes very important when we compare it with the Western philosophy of linear time, where there is judgment day and apocalypse or Qiyamah. Now that we are discussing this, in this scenario of Advaita and cyclical notion of time, the unending cycle of life and death, Pralaya and Srishti, we have to understand the role of Raja or Rajan. Rajan in this situation has to create the conditions by which the subjects or the people in his kingdom are able to do good karma. As a result of this karma, or good karma, a person can be released from the cycle of life and death. Therefore, the primary role of the Rajan is to create conditions of justice, truthfulness, and conditions in which every segment of society is able to do his or her work properly, earn money, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. These four aims are fulfilled by each and everyone in his kingdom. This is Rajadharma, so that everybody is able to do dharma, artha, kama, moksha, do good karma and get moksha or release from this cycle. Now, preservation of this social order and harmony is known as we have already said, Rajadharma. This is most important. We find this system being analyzed later in the modern context by Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay. The integral humanism mentioned by Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay is of the same nature, that the government or the state must provide conditions for truthfulness, justice and equality, so that every person is able to fulfill the four aims of life, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Now the major examples in this, as we have discussed all the philosophies and the background of Vedas and etc., we find the biggest example of an ideal ruler in the Ramayana in Bhagwan Ram. In Ram, we find the epitome of what a Rajan or a government or a state should do. The Rajan, the king, does not rule for his own glorification. The king does not rule for his own income. but rather for creating conditions of dharma and good karma of his subjects. Ram does that. He sacrifices himself for the benefit of the people and for dharma. Equally, in the same dynasty of Ikshvaku or the dynasty of Bhagwan Ram, we find the king Harishchandra. Harishchandra also sacrifices everything for truth and justice. Equally, in the family of Bhagwati Sita, we find King Janak, who used to be a farmer. Like his own people, he used to farm and till the soil. So these are three major examples from our Oriental or the Dharmic system, how a king should behave. Gita means here the warlike nature or the importance of warfare is again reasserted in the duties of Rajan. In the duties of Rajan, we have seen how he should maintain harmony, he should maintain social order, he should do Rajadharma. An important part of the Rajadharma was to wage war and win against adharma. For the first time in Gita, we come face to face with the concept of adharma. Adharma or conditions which are not allowing poor people, common people, the ordinary person to fulfill the four aims of dharma, artha, kama, moksha. That is adharma. A situation in the kingdom, a situation in society or in politics, in administration, where people are not able to fulfill these four aims. That situation, that condition is adharma. And that is why Bhagavan Krishna in Gita says, to defeat adharma and to remove all these obstacles and to remove all these impediments to truth and justice and to establish dharma, the king, the pious king, should always wage war, even if it be against his own people, his own family. So that's why Gita posits the concept of dharma yudh. Dharma yudh is preservation of order, harmony, justice, truth, and humanity. The king cannot be passive and non-violent. The king has to actively pursue the establishment and preservation of dharma. So Gita comes back to the idea of warfare. So we find that the Rajan has two aspects of activity. One, we can say the peaceful activities of maintaining order and harmony in the kingdom. And the second, warlike activities or aggressive activities of maintaining the dharma in the kingdom and to see that adharma does not spread, control adharma. So these two aspects that we will again explore as we go on. Now there is a Buddhist intervention. Buddhist intervention has stressed on non-violence. Buddhist intervention also talks of dharma, but the dharma is a little bit different because Buddhism philosophically is Dvaita, that means, and does not draw inspiration from Vedas. Buddhism does not believe in Vedas, though it talks of dharma, and Buddhism believes in the distinction between mind and matter. In Buddhism, the primary mover or the engine that moves society and history and time is the concept of causality. Things are related to one another because of cause and effect, a series of cause and effect. There is no concept of a immortal Atman, as in Vedanta, in Advaita we see. There is an Atma which is immortal. Atma does not die. This Atma has to be liberated through good karma and following of dharma. And there are four aims of life: dharma, artha, kama, moksha. But in Buddhism, the concept of dharma, artha, kama, moksha is not there. The concept is of nirvana. Now, nirvana is to break this chain of cause and effect. And therefore, Buddhism by nature becomes imperialistic. Because in Buddhism, the concept of adharma is all those who do not believe in the message of Buddha. Therefore, we find that Ashoka was basically imperialistic, and his aim was to spread Buddhist dharma, which he called Dhamma. But Buddhism ultimately failed because of this basic contradiction of spreading the message of Buddha and also maintaining non-violence. So, because of this contradiction and the idea of non-violence, Buddhist state and the Buddhist structure did not survive, as non-violence made the Rajan or the king passive and therefore easily conquered. In this, we find an important role played by Acharya Chanakya. By the time of Chanakya, both the Sanatan Vedic system and the Buddhist system had been well established in India. There were various kings who had been Buddhist, though Ashoka came later on and was imperialistic. But Acharya Chanakya was able to establish two very important things. First was, he was able to define the boundaries of the Jambudvip or the Aryavrat or Bharatvarsha as we know it today, and also establish the concept of foreigners, people who were foreign to Bharatvarsha, not because of race or looking different. Foreigners were those people who did not believe in the dharmic concepts, the basics of either Buddhism or Vedantism or Vedas. People who were alien to both Buddhism and dharmic principles, Hinduism, were seen as mlechas or foreigners. So this concept of foreigners and the territorial integrity of Bharatvarsha are the main contributions of Arthashastra and Acharya Chanakya, as well as the different principles, the important principles of statecraft, like diplomacy, statesmanship, rights and duties of citizens, were well-established systems of administration and taxation. These are the contributions of Acharya Chanakya in his book Magnum Opus Arthashastra. Now we come to the invasion of Islam. The Islamic concept as it entered in India, now we find that Islamic concept, like any other Abrahamic concept, be it Christianity or Judaism, does not believe in the cyclic notion of time. The basic aims are not dharma, artha, kama, moksha. The basic aims are not equality and justice and truthfulness. The concept of harmony, social order does not exist, because Islam believes, like other Abrahamic concepts, believes in a linear concept of time. In this linear concept of time, the present condition is imperfect. Man is born sinner. Human society is imperfect. Man and society has to move towards perfection. Man has to be either saved, redeemed, or pardoned, and find good judgment on the apocalyptic day, the end of the world. At the end of the universe, everybody will be judged. And how to achieve perfection from imperfection, that path is also clearly defined and given. In Sharia, in Hadith, in the Holy Quran, through these various texts, the path is also shown. How to proceed from imperfection to perfection. So, the task of the Islamic ruler is very simple, that is to impose the laws, jurisprudence, and the ideas given in the texts of Islam. It does not have to bother about truth, justice, equality, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, harmony, social order. The main aim is to impose the word of the text, because the basic concept is that time is linear, the present condition is imperfect. To achieve perfection, that is to find good judgment on the last day, judgment day, some deeds have to be performed, and the deeds are given in the text. Now, European colonialism, when Europeans came to India, the same thing continued, but in the Anglican or the church manner. In the Anglican, the church manner, there were mainly three phases of English rule in India. First, we find in the beginning, the English had the missionary zeal. They interacted with Indian people, they wanted to convert, plus they were also interested in mercantile loot and plunder and profit for the English East India Company. That was one kind of rule before 1857. After the struggle of 1857, the English found out that there was nothing to be gained. In fact, it was dangerous to interact with the Indians, because the English also realized that the dharmic concepts followed in India and the very ethos of India, the soul of Bharatvarsh, was different from their Christian missionary ideas and their Christian ideas. So, water and oil would not mix, and it has led to the calamity of 1857, the war of 1857. So, they withdrew after 1857 and then tried to impose a kind of English landlord and the lord-master relationship, in which the English became lords and were giving sermons, teachings, and the Indians as natives, they had to learn from the English. The English would instruct and the Indians would learn. This phase also went on till 1911, 12, 1913, 1909, 1910. That is to say, up till the Swadeshi movement, after which becomes a third phase, when the English realized that the Indians had not only learned from the English, but had adopted the English and the European notions, adopted them into and metamorphosed them into their own dharmic concepts. Rishi Aurobindo, Swami Vivekanand, Subramaniam Bharati, Dayanand Saraswati, Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal, Lala Lajpat Rai, they were able to use English education, Indianize it, make it dharmic, and then launch a movement against English oppression. So that is why after 1911, after the Swadeshi movement, from 1915 onwards, the third phase begins, where the English try to import Bolshevism or ideas of communism into India and make the Indian administrative system a kind of pattern relationship in which the Indian polity becomes one of divide and rule. In true sense, divide and rule comes after 1911, after the shock the English received from the Swadeshi movement, in which the Indian intelligentsia, the dharmic resurgence was massive, from Rishi Aurobindo being a spiritualist as well as a freedom fighter, Swami Vivekananda being a sannyasi and giving a message for nationalism. Then the English realized that there was a dharmic resurgence and dharma was reborn in Bharatvarsh. And that is when in the third phase they tried divide and rule by giving reservations to the Muslims, to the other Hindu communities, dividing communities on religion, etc., and making an administration which was mainly predatory in a Bolshevik sense. It was a socialist, communist administration. The English started the communist way of administration in India, where it was a pattern kind relationship. The people would be dependent on the state for their bread, their livelihood, etc., etc. But in the dharmic concept, the people are not dependent on the Rajan for bread, their livelihood. In fact, the Rajan only creates conditions for people to achieve dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Now we come to how this, now we have discussed India. Now we have to see how the birthplace of dharma or the Oriental way, which is Bharatvarsh, how our Hindu ethos, our Buddhist ethos, Buddhist is non-Vedantic and Hindu Sanatan is Vedantic, but both are born in India and both are dharmic in their own way. Buddhism is a little bit imperialistic, has a contradiction of being imperialistic as well as non-violent. Dharmic or the Hindu Sanatan system is non-imperialistic. It is not imperialistic, but it is warlike. It is it has great military values and believes in violence, in righteous violence, in the dharmic violence. So both these things spread to China, Japan, Korea, Thailand, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Tibet, Mongolia, all these places. These are the saffron world. This is the Oriental system is followed here. Now what we find that similarly, like we find that there is Mahayana form in some countries, there is Hinayana form in some countries. In Bali, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, forms of Sanatan Hindu dharmic forms are also, forms of Sanatan Hindu concepts are still being followed in Bali, in Cambodia, particularly Cambodia and Bali. Cambodia has the largest, has the biggest Hindu temple in all over the world, not even in India, like Angkor Wat. Angkor Wat is the biggest Vishnu mandir in the entire world. It is not in India, it is in Cambodia. Vietnam has Chin Brahmins, they call them Chin Brahmins. In Vietnam, there is a caste of Brahmins who perform Hindu rituals, puja, archana, etc. is performed. In Thailand, the old kingdom, the old capital was called Ayutthaya, which is Ayodhya, the capital of Lord Ram and Bhagwan Ram. And in Thailand, the ruling family is said to be the family of Bhagwan Ram. They draw their lineage from Ram. Now, in Confucius we find the major, in China, we will speak about China and Japan mainly, because apart from Bharatvarsh, these two countries have followed a certain method. China may be a communist country, but its soul is Confucian. And the system may be whatever there is today in China, but we find that the system being followed by the Chinese are the Confucian systems. In Confucian system, the concept of harmony or dharma, artha, kama, moksha is not so much important as the importance of maintaining order in society. The society has to be administered in such a way that there is order in society. It follows a kind of Manusmriti, so to speak. Like Manusmriti, like in Manu, we find there is a constant fear of Matsayan or anarchy, collapse of the order, Varna Sankar. Nobody is doing whatever is supposed for that person to do. Nobody is following duties. Nobody is doing what is told. There is total anarchy. The Confucian theory is also concerned with anarchy. It is fearful of anarchy. So it has the preservation of order in society. It merged with Taoism or old natural worship, and therefore societal order becomes important. In China, the most important thing is, as opposed to Japan, which has followed a martial theory, the Bushido or samurai, in China, the Mandarin is more important than the warrior. So we find in China that they're the primacy of intellectual or the educated classes, because the concept is to maintain order. And the important things are xenophobia, concept of middle kingdom, and mandate of heaven. So in Chinese theory, it is the educated people who will maintain order, social order. The mandarins will rule, they will administer, and the king, the Rajan may come and go. The kings will come and go, but the administration will remain the same. So Confucian classics are taught, and all the mandarins used to learn the classics, Confucian classics, Mencius classics, and the various precepts of Taoism, common law. So administrative integrity is more important than harmony or other. Social order is a form of harmony, but social order even at the cost of suppression of the masses. So the same thing continues. In Zen, we find a kind of spiritualism. In Japan, we find that the king is divine. The king is divine because the king has, or the emperor, the Hirohito and then Akihito, the present emperor. The Japanese emperor has the spirit of Japan in him. Therefore, the king or the emperor is divine. Japanese belief system of Zen, it has a strong spiritual connotation. Because of the spiritual connotation, we can say it adheres more to the Rishi Parampara. And because of the Rishi Parampara and the concept of ancestor worship, Zen leads in a way to Bushido. Zen believes that everything has a spirit, animate, inanimate objects, hills, mountains, rivers, everything, everybody has a spirit. And that spirit is primarily dharmic. And that spirit has vibrations, it has harmony. Each and every spirit has to be in harmony with the other spirit. So the river has to be in harmony with the mountains have to be in harmony with the trees have to be in harmony with the clouds have to be in harmony with the ocean, etc., etc. Now last we come to Bushido. The Japanese system of Oriental statecraft becomes militaristic. It becomes militaristic because it follows in a way the Advaita and the Gita which are stressed on constant struggle against adharma. Now in the Bushido concept also, adharma is not so much delineated, but what is said that nationalism or cultural nationalism, any idea which is anathema or which is opposed to the spirit of Japan, the spirit or the soul of Japan, the ethos of Japan, and who is the personification of the spirit or the ethos of the soul of Japan? The Emperor of Japan. Anything which is hurting the Emperor of Japan, anything which hurts the soul and the spirit of Japan, anything which hurts the traditions, the cultures, because the strong element of Zen and Bushido is ancestor worship. Japan adopted the Kshatriya Dharma, whereas we found through Confucius, China adopted the Brahminical system, the intellectual way. But Japan followed the Kshatriya way. The samurai or the Bushido, the way of Bushido, the way of the warrior, is like the cherry blossom. The warrior will live for a very small time. The warrior will die very soon. But the little period that the warrior lives, that has to be the most beautiful period. So the warrior, the samurai, is well accomplished. He is very educated. He is gentleman. He knows truthfulness. He adheres to justice. He adheres to morals and ethics. That is a samurai, because for the small time period that the samurai will live, he will have to live the most beautiful life, the most respectful life. And that is why in Bushido, the concept becomes beauty, strength, courage, discipline, and self sacrifice is very much like Satyam Shivam Sundaram that we find in our Shaivism. That is why we can say Bushido comes very near to Shaivism. Because in Shaivism also, Shiva is the Ishwar of destruction. He is most powerful. But he is also, he is a destroyer. But Shiva is also the Ishwar of dance, drama, poetry, of all things that is beautiful. And Shiva is Satya, truthfulness. So Satyam Shivam Sundaram. And Shiva is self-sacrificing. Shiva has drunk the poison from Amrita Manthan, from the Manthan Sagar. He drank poison, Shiva, to save the world. So the samurai, the warrior, drinks poison to save society, sacrifices himself to save society. So like Shiva, the Bushido comes very close to Satyam Shivam Sundaram and Shaivism. So in conclusion, we find that all the Oriental systems, be it Vedantic, non-Vedantic, Buddhism, Zen, Confucius, Bushido, Mahayana, Hinayana, they share many common aspects and very many common points which we can call Dharmic system or the saffron system. Thank you very much. With this we come to the end of this lecture.